Hi, I'm Jack Berry. I'm an old-time golf writer in Michigan, and talking with an old-time friend who left the state to become a top golf course designer in the Jack Nicklaus stable, and is doing it all over the world. Jim Lipe. Jim, good to see you here.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Great to see you again, Jack. It's been many years.
Right. Jim is originally from Louisiana, LSU guy, right?
That's correct.
And when did you leave Michigan?
Lived in Ann Arbor area, Ypsilanti, Ann Arbor for 10 years. I left here in '82. And that's when I went to work with, shortly thereafter, when I moved to Louisiana, I went to work with the Nicklaus organization. Matter of fact, that's where I originally met Bob Steele, who's the contractor here on this project. So we have a long history there, too.
Well, while you were here, you were one of the top amateurs in the state, won some nice amateur tournaments.
Well, you're being very generous.
You were, what, at Washtenaw Country Club, you remember there?
I was at Washtenaw, started playing golf when I was 15 there, and under Tom Talkington, and kind of made a lot of really lifelong friends, one of which I'm actually visiting here this week for a couple of days.
And assistant golf coach at the University of Michigan for a while?
Yeah, Bill Newcomb. Bill Newcomb and I were partners, and we were kind of co-coaches. He was the head coach when I came to work with him in 1972, and he just let me just kind of tag along, and it was great fun. We had some, we recruited some nice players who've gone on to do quite well, and it was a lot of fun.
How did you get into golf course design?
Oh boy, that's a long story.
We've got time.
Well, I originally was in business, got a business degree from LSU, and Vietnam was right there looming. I actually was drafted, actually was on the bus to go to Fort Polk, which was a 6-week trip right to Vietnam, and for some reason, I flunked the physical in New Orleans. I wasn't even supposed to go to New Orleans. I was supposed to go to Leesville, which is where Fort Polk is, but they took us to New Orleans. I flunked the physical. They told me to go back and get my knee operated on, which I had a torn cartilage. And, of course, I was not about to go get my knee operated on. But during that time span, as I recall, my draft board was in Dearborn, Michigan, and somebody blew up the draft board, and so all the records were lost, for one thing, but also they had the lottery came out at that time. My number was 285, and so therefore I was never in danger of having to go. But of course it was a very trying time back then. So I had to get back into school, and so it was either law school or grad school, and it just so happened that LSU had the #1 landscape architecture school in the nation, and they were offering a program beginning that year for people from another discipline to come in and get a master's degree in landscape architecture in 3 years. And so I was fortunate enough to get into that program, and of course they didn't know anything about golf course design, and that's where my specific interest was. And so they kind of helped me tailor a program around that. And after 3 years and a thesis, I was the only one to graduate on time because there was no work for anybody. So they kind of hung around school. But I came to work with Bill Newcomb. He was very generous to me, helped me with my thesis, was very supportive, and went to work with Bill in downtown Ann Arbor. And it was...
you worked at a number of courses around here, didn't you?
Sure.
Travis Point.
Travis Point was probably the first big course that that Bill and I did together, and we worked on it. He had a construction company, so I actually worked on the construction company, which was great experience for me, not only from a design standpoint. I was getting a lot of construction experience, which ultimately proved to be very beneficial when I went to work with Jack Nicklaus, because they were looking for someone, when I went to work with him, to have architectural design experience, but some construction experience where I could actually live on a project and get a project done, because it was Jack's first international course in Cornwall, England, a course called St. Million. So I literally had to leave my family and go over there and spend time. And Bob Steele and I lived together, as he was the lead shaper for Wadsworth Construction at the time, the best shaper in the business, as a matter of fact. And we were fortunate enough to get him there. And Bob and I worked together, lived together for some 18 months or so over there, and that was quite an eye-opening experience.
What was the difference between here and there?
Oh, I've never really had worked overseas, and Cornwall, England, is so much different than anything you see in the London area. I mean, it's just you're a rural countryside, and you're really kind of out in the middle of nowhere. And fortunately, they had a little hotel and club there already, and we were building the second golf course there, which was going to be a championship course, which ultimately became the home for the Benson and Hedges for some 10 or 12 years, right after it was completed. So it was a very successful development for them. But it was just just living in an area where the government was different, the people, their attitudes toward work, everything was just a little different. Because the only machinery we had on the job was Bob Steele's bulldozer. Everything else was done by wagons and moving dirt, and the owners were potato farmers, and so it was an interesting deal.
Early days, this is like Mackenzie.
Well, Jack at that time was not traveling overseas. I mean, he made one trip to the British Open every year, so it was pretty much myself and Bob building this golf course, just with some long distance phone call conversations. So it was interesting.
Well, you've done a lot of international trips, didn't you?
Well, when things got just tremendously busy there at the end of the late 80s and the early 90s, when everything was exploding everywhere, especially in the Far East, Japan, Thailand, Taiwan. Spent quite a bit of time over there going back and forth. And that was another totally new experience. So, yeah, I mean, I've had some great experiences working for Jack Nicklaus. He's put me on some wonderful projects and met a whole lot of really wonderful people along the way.
Now, how do you handle his designs? Is it,
Well, Jack, he always likes to say that everything that's kind of like under the ground, he doesn't have a whole lot to do with it, but everything that we see above ground, he has his hand in it, and matter of fact, it's his. And I think that's very correct. Jack is probably much more involved with the design than I would say any other quote name architect. I mean, every green, every fairway, everything is sketched out, and then he just basically turns it over to me to put it into a scale and to be able to present the plans and so forth to a contractor so we can bid it and have documentation that we can construct the golf course from. But then Jack makes site visits, makes changes, draws sketches, and that's the way he operates. He's very detailed, very, very detailed, as you might imagine.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
With a Karnak.
Yeah.
How many courses did you do with him?
Oh gosh, I've never really counted them, but you don't always finish a golf course that you start. I might do the routing for a golf course, go stake it, even clear it or something, and then because of where it's located, another designer may, in the company at the time, may, because of his travel schedule, might actually take over the project, or vice versa. I might do the same thing. So I would say I probably had my hands, and a lot of them were never even constructed, but easily 150 golf courses.
In about how many countries?
Well, in Europe and Asia and South America and Mexico. So I mean, it's
Join Jack Nicklaus and see the world.
well, it's really. I mean, I've had quite an education.
Now, how did you get into doing it yourself?
Well, during my time with Jack, I've had some people approach me. Could I do a golf course with them, or could I do it on my own? And one of the things I didn't say to you was that when I finished that stint in England, when I came home, my father-in-law had actually built a home for us in my absence, basically. I mean, I saw it a little bit when I was coming home on trips, but he was 72 years old when he built it by himself, not a crew, by himself. I can't emphasize that enough. So when I got home, Jack says, okay, you ready to move to Florida? Because everybody that worked in the company lived out of Florida. There was no exceptions. I said, Jack, I got a problem. And he said, well, let's just try it for a year and see how it works out. Fortunately, fax machines and things like that, and I could always catch up with him on a job site. I'm still in the same house. okay, 30 years later. So it worked out wonderfully. And so my point is that he allowed me to do some things that he didn't allow other people to do at the time. And one of those was to pursue some of my own design work, because I already had experience. And he said, sure, Jim, do whatever you want. As long as you do take care of my work, fine. And so I had some nice opportunities. And I did that. And so I worked with a couple other golf course, players, David Toms and Hal Sutton.
A couple of Louisiana guys.
A couple of Louisiana, actually Shreveport guys. Both of them are living in Shreveport. So it was very convenient. So Jack was very helpful in just letting me do that, and that just kind of broke off into, when things got slower and so forth. Back in like '09, I guess. It was more me being able to pursue my own renovation projects, and then of course I shouldn't say that, but people contact me. I mean, I'm of an age right now that I don't have the time or energy to go bust it, to go get work like a lot of guys. Like I'm not chasing China or the Far East or stuff like that. And I'm very thankful that there are people like Roy Wilbanks and Wes Blevins and that are have enough confidence in me to be able to do what they want to do here, to bring this to the point where they want to improve their golf course.
And how did they bring you back to Michigan?
Well, actually, it was through Roy Wilbanks. I know Roy from way back, and he told me that they were going to be doing this, and fortunately, Wes Blevins, I don't know if you know this or not, but he's actually spent some time in Shreveport. He actually was on the Shreveport, or the Mud Bugs, which is a hockey team there. He's a top-flight hockey player, and so we had a little connection there. Roy brought me in. I made a presentation to him. They liked what I had to say, and then from there we developed a contract.